Welcome back to the Atlanta Construction Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Arsenault. On this episode, we have Jeff Graham of Construction AI and Blueforce. We'll be talking about artificial intelligence in construction and the role that it plays, Blueforce and its recruitment for construction workers, and more. Hope you enjoy. All right, welcome back to the Atlanta Construction Podcast. Very happy today to have with us Jeff Graham.
Great to be here, Dan.
Thanks, man. From Construction AI.
That's me. Yeah.
And AI in this case does stand for artificial intelligence.
That's the idea.
And so we've got some really interesting topics today. We'll try and break them down and make them relevant to our listeners. So under that heading, machine learning, blockchain, and a bunch of other stuff.
Happy to talk about all of it.
Yeah. So to dive in, maybe just talk about how you sort of your journey into ending up, being where you're at with this unique service in the construction industry.
Well, it started in my childhood bedroom, Dan, as a grown man.
Most dreams do.
So what happened is, so I have a degree in communication from Simon Fraser, and I kind of worked in that field for quite a while. And along the way, a lot of people had encouraged me to kind of explore more of the entrepreneurial thing. And so I ended up doing estimating consulting with my dad. And that resulted in me being, I would have been in my early 30s in my childhood bedroom, basically entering lines on a laptop. And I was just sort of like thinking, there's got to be more to this, right? This journey,
be more to life.
It's got to be, yeah. And that's, and it's not to disparage, like it was actually like really important stuff. Like we're doing civil estimating. It was valuable service. It paid well and all that kind of stuff. But I really struggled with like, is this going to be like my story, right?
The tedious parts.
Exactly. The tedious parts of it, especially. And, given that I was kind of like, we did this for a few years, but like there was, because you're learning, that you kind of do the more tedious parts, right?
Yeah.
Instead of the interesting thing. And what happened is I had a kind of a chance encounter with the data scientist, and I told him what I did, and he's going like, that couldn't be totally automated, right?
Right.
And at that point, I think we just had our fourth kid, and I'm sort of going like, I'm in trouble.
The wheels started turning.
Right. Like it's sort of like a little bit worried about like what I'd picked to do in a lot of respects. And I guess the answer there is like the entire thing I think would be enormously difficult to automate, but there are certainly aspects of it that are very turned out to be very realistic as far as automation goes.
Okay. I think that's a good spot to ask this question. What's the difference between automation and machine learning?
Yeah, sure. So machine learning is a type of automation. Automation in a way is like a function, right? So, it's like those silly dog food. So my luck, somebody who makes these things is going to be listening to the podcast.
What, you mean the silly, automatic dog food?
The dog food
feeder? I want to get one of those.
So a function would be like you load the dog food in the top bit, and it's like the trap door opens, and Bozo comes over and eats it, right? Like that's a type of automation.
Right.
What machine learning is, or a way of explaining, I should say, because it is a very diverse field. But like one example would be with machine learning, you could give a neural network, say 2,000 examples of, say, maybe dog food brands, right? And it could look at, say, any given bag of dog food and go, oh, that is Kirkland, large dog, whatever, right? Or Purina puppy chow, so it can actually, the automation is in its ability to predict a brand new thing, right? Something it's never seen before. It can actually make a prediction on what it is.
Right. So so the machine is learning.
Yes. How it's learning is,
which is why it's called machine learning.
That this is you're catching on so fast, Dan.
Let's cut that out.
I don't think you should cut that out. That's why it's called machine learning. Because the machine. Very good.
Gotcha.
So the
we're having fun. That's
but there's different ways that a machine can learn, and this is I think where people can get really tripped up, right? So the type of machine learning that we do is called supervised learning, which is basically where you get a data scientist that is actively teaching the computer what to do, right? So we're giving it examples, and basically when it fails at its task, a data scientist looks at it and goes, okay, why did it fail? Why didn't it correctly identify this part of the plans or whatever? Okay. And so they go in and they basically essentially tweak the code, or use different techniques to basically iron out kind of these edge cases related to that function.
Right. Okay. So let me set up a scenario, and you tell me if I'm wrong. Just
Sure.
to make this relevant to, say, a contractor who has a quantity surveyor, an estimator in their estimating department. Say 3 or 4 estimators.
Sure.
In their estimating department. So they're going to benefit from machine learning in the sense that your software is linked with the estimating software that they're using, and a door count on a 12-story building with anywhere from 30 to 50 man doors per floor. They don't have to manually click the mouse on all those door openings and count that data. That data can be recognized by the software as a similar shapes and counted automatically.
Yeah. So we are really trying to get the computer to do the things that it's good at, and kind of leave the things that people are good at, kind of in that space, right? So with your example there, we can identify, say, all of the rectangles on a PDF, right? Rectangles of the exact shape, right? Or like an exact size. And then so the computer goes, okay, I found 37 of these rectangles. What do you want to call them? And then a person looks at it and goes, oh, those are doors.
Right.
The computer, believe it or not, would really struggle with going, those are doors. Because it sees maybe 8,000 rectangles. It could be squares, rectangles, and it kind of I don't know what the doors are. Yeah. But we look at it, and that's a really good classification task for us, right? This is kind of more, in terms of the earthworks thing. What our software can do is it can take a PDF of a survey. So with the spot elevations for an existing survey, and it can look at the it basically comes as a series of, say, 100, 200, 500 X's on a page, and next
on a topography
on
PDF
a survey
site plan, right?
Yeah. And basically next to those X's you'd have the elevation above sea level. It could be 62.81, and then that'll be 62.98, and then so on, and all of those elevations put together basically give you your topographical information, right?
And as opposed to someone inputting those.
Yeah, so this is a unique capability that we have, but basically we use machine learning to analyze those plans, and we can extract an entire point cloud from the PDF for the estimator to put in the model. So whatever software you're using, it could be AgTech, Trimble Business Center, Kubla Cubed, whatever it is, right. We can take that data out and put it into your software and basically save you that kind of real pain, in my experience, huge pain in the butt task, related to earthworks estimating. So it's we can kind of group all these shapes together for you so that you don't have to count them. We can do that. We also have something called a predictive layering function. So we can analyze a PDF and separate them out into their component parts. And so it's we basically look at it and go, okay, I think these things belong together. And then often what it'll do is that's all your proposed roadworks in this layer. So we can take that and put that into a model. Oh, those are kind of basically the engineering. That's the engineering stamp. I don't need that. You can kind of toss it out. Right. But basically, we make an attempt at kind of separating out this data into a hierarchy, so that the estimator just saves a little bit of time in terms of some of that data would go into the existing model, some of it will go into the design model, some of it just isn't relevant to what they're bidding, or is right. Just it's just something that it was on the PDF, again, like an engineering stamp.
Right. So essentially, construction AI's software services are providing value to mostly in the estimating field, or are there other areas of construction where that same value is being extrapolated by the individuals working as estimators or as
Yeah, I mean, so right now it would be primarily like pre-construction estimating, right? But it does have implications for other things, right? Like we can read text and numbers, and it doesn't mean that there isn't kind of more kind of potential for it down the road.
Okay.
As far as other construction management
Yeah,
goes.
it's extremely interesting. So let's talk a little bit about Construction AI, the company. There's a few partners involved, right? And these other partners are throughout the country, Western Canada.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So my primary business partner is Dr. Jason Hurd. He's a researcher. He's teaches at Mount Royal. He's been in kind of machine learning robotics for, I mean, it's been like 20 years, but he's also one of those people that's kind of tinkered with the computer for his entire life.
Right.
And then we have some investors primarily out in Western Canada. So these would be owners of construction companies that have kind of mainly been in my network, but I guess know the pain related to estimating and just how much work these things are.
Yeah, and be able to show you like where the value is going to be so much appreciated in those
That's right.
monotonous daily tasks of any counting
That's right.
tasks or along those lines. Yeah.
Yeah, and these investors are strategic in that. So I guess the part of construction that I know enough to be dangerous on, at least, is earthworks. But one of them is in modular construction, and the other one does residential kind of homes. So we've kind of got like a bit of that commercial, bit of modular, bit of residential, and they're kind of able to educate me on some of the knowledge gaps that we have. So we've got a good team of people that kind of, I think, have there's a bit of bench strength in terms of industry knowledge.
Yeah, 100%. Let's just for some context, where does Construction AI fit in the grand scheme
Sure.
of things? So from what I'm hearing, it's you guys are providing this automation, machine learning additive to the software, and you're partnering with large construction software companies that are providing estimating software, whether it's tender software, project management software, and you're teaming with them to provide a service that has these benefits to them.
Yeah, yes.
Faster.
So we have validated the technology with existing construction companies. So like we have had some earthworks companies that have used software and basically kind of validated that it does what it's supposed to do, which it's obviously a really good first step. And then in terms of our commercialization model, the primary partnerships that we're pursuing are actually with the large players. So these would be companies that already have a significant existing customer base, where we essentially are kind of a cog in the giant whatever you want to call it,
Right.
the monolith that some of these are. One of the things I've noticed in the construction industry is there's been a fairly significant consolidation of a lot of these construction technology companies. Hexagon AB would be a big player out there. Obviously Trimble, and that would be the type of company that where it's like ideally we're kind of slotting in.
Okay. What is blockchain?
Yeah. So it's a loaded question. I think a lot of people, somewhat rightly associate it with cryptocurrency, right? The way cryptocurrencies is that essentially it's a giant ledger of transactions and accounts, right? So it's like you've got, and all of these things are just basically numbers, but essentially you have an ever-growing number of accounts and transactions and currency in this enormous thing called a blockchain. And the reason that it is so significant for so many industries, but I'd say it's like construction and manufacturing especially, is that it's a type of database that can only ever grow. Like you can't delete something off of a blockchain. It's just against its architecture. So it's an ever-growing record of whatever the heck you've told it to keep track of, right? So like an example for construction would be like with change orders. You could go, the client changed the paint from red to blue to yellow to green. Historically, you might have deleted, yellow, blue, like you deleted the existing colors. With blockchain, there would actually be a record of each time the color was changed. So it creates like an audit log going back on whatever you were doing. So it's a database architecture, and in a way, like the idea is really simple, right? Like I feel like it sounds like a fancy word, but it's a simple idea. It's just like you can't delete stuff now. Like you gotta think like so you need to build your software in a way where it's like it's growing, so account for that. But it's like you're not overwriting stuff in a database anymore. Like if you can picture this in your mind's eye, the way database architecture has been is like an Excel spreadsheet. And in that Excel spreadsheet, you can add stuff, right? But you can also overwrite stuff. So once it's overwritten, it's gone. Right. Mm-hmm. Again, with blockchain, it's like it doesn't allow you to do that.
Or you can mistakenly delete things.
Yeah, exactly.
Or your computer shuts off, or it's not saved to a hard drive.
Great example. Yeah. But with blockchain, it's something that grows over time, right? And so it's like you get this really robust audit log for whatever it is that you were doing. So it has really significant impacts for things like contracts. Right. I mean, the whole thing with Ethereum, which is the second most valuable cryptocurrency in the world, is that it's a series of smart contracts, or kind of like relationships between different holders of this currency. And I would say that it has really interesting impacts for construction. Now, just to be clear, that isn't something that isn't a space that I'm playing in per se, but I would say that it's something that I think is going to be emerging in the construction space in the coming years, just because it's such a great application for it.
Right. And so is there any examples currently where blockchain is being used in construction software, whether it be PM software or CAD or design software?
Yeah. So again, it's not something where I'm necessarily kind of like, we're not developing for the blockchain per se. So I'm not really too aware of exactly what might be on the kind of product roadmap for different companies, but it would be more like I think we can get a pretty strong sense that it will be a big part of what we have going forward. And those examples that you mentioned, like I think it'd be amazing for a product manager a project manager to get a record of the different. There's so many examples. It's actually hard to name.
It's hard to just pick out a few because it's endless. Like even you mentioned change orders. PM standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's huge.
Yeah.
Some jobs have hundreds.
Yeah. Addenda, right, to a contract.
Addendums on a tender software.
And then there'd be like a series of like sign-offs, right? So it's like a record of every sign-off. Who signed off on that? Like, okay. It's like all of these things that kind of like build on each other, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like an ever-growing record. Like a construction project should be an ever-growing record of what the heck is going on.
What the heck went on?
Or what happened here?
Exactly.
It's like,
that's the industry we're in.
But it's one of those things where blockchain just gives such a robust log of activity, right?
Yeah. Wow. I think it could also be useful in the estimating space too, right? I mean, or maybe more in the design space. Like,
yeah, why not?
If you're an architecture firm and you're logging all your different designs from, point A to point Z before the project is even finalized.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's like if you're just think about like a workflow. Right. And it's like who made that change to the design, right? With something like blockchain, it would all just be right there. Yeah. It's something I should mention this too. It's like a way of storing files. There's different applications for it, but essentially like we develop on our software on something called Amazon Web Services. They're the largest cloud provider in the world, and they're owned by Amazon, right? And one of their newest offerings is something called a quantum ledger database, and essentially it's a database where a series of files can just be saved to this architecture that just grows, right? So you could fairly easily, if you're a design firm, you could just start saving your files to something like one of these ledgers, and you'd have a record of all of this kind of like design change activity that's happened even before you got to the client.
Yeah. Very cool. So I know that, undoubtedly there's people working in construction in Atlantic Canada, whether it be as quantity surveyors and estimators or project managers, that are benefiting in some way from automation and machine learning in the software that they're using.
Sure.
That's obvious. But I'm just wondering, like, for construction AI and yourself, being a Nova Scotian, sort of what your kind of, plans are with construction AI,
Yeah, sure.
Locally, within the local region. And, I think you mentioned you're planning on building a team here and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so I think Nova Scotia is a very, and I would actually say, I'm just saying this because it's not from personal experience. Nova Scotia is from personal experience. Atlantic Canada would just be like kind of more of an anecdotal experience. Is a really great place in terms of startups right now. So younger startups especially. There's a lot of really good government support through like InnovaCore, ACOA. There's the CBDC. There's the NSBI. Because we're so research focused, we leverage SR and ED tax credits. There's also NRC IRAP, which is huge, right? So in terms of like what I guess. Sorry, I'm kind of interpreting your question as like, why Nova Scotia? A big part of it is the support that's here. Mm-hmm. It would also be, a really great place in terms of cost of living. And so much of this stuff now can be done remote, right? Like you're not necessarily expected to move to Menlo Park to do a startup nowadays, especially since the pandemic. And what makes, I think, Nova Scotia even more compelling is that you actually have a lot of really good researchers at the local universities, like St. FX and St. Mary's and Dalhousie. They all have thriving data science component to their computer science programs, right? Graduating with all kinds of wonderful degrees like computer vision and using time series data to predict events based on what's happened in the past.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's a lot of aspects about the local market and just the local scenario that makes your business leads into your business having thriving in that regard.
I would say, and obviously a really good construction scene. That goes without saying.
100%.
It's been neat for me because I'm not from here, right? I grew up in British Columbia, but was born in Alberta, and it has been really cool being so welcomed. Right.
Right.
There's in both the construction scene and in the startup scene, it's been really easy to kind of like get an open door and a conversation with people. And I think it's like another, I think it's a bit of a maritimer thing, but just like hospitality and kind of like openness to new ideas. It's been awesome from that standpoint.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to hear. Excuse me, to hear you explain the different services and the different angles that construction AI works in. And for someone like me who, I've just have no prior knowledge of how this sort of stuff happens on the back end.
But now you do have knowledge, Dan.
Now I do. And that's great. And it's so interesting. And like you wouldn't even, you're doing those things throughout the day, and as the years go on, these monotonous, tedious tasks just disappear, and it's not like it just happened. There's actually like so much going on behind the scenes.
There's somebody that beat their head against the wall for
20 years.
Hopefully not that long. Yeah, like a lot. Like, man, when I look at just what you can do with like a smartphone now, it gives you a huge appreciation for how complicated and how difficult a lot of this stuff would have been to have like researched and made. But I mean, it's already in our lives, right? Like when you talk to Alexa, there was a lot of research that went into your ability to basically order a pizza on your speaker.
Yeah.
Right.
There you go.
It's like it's a noble cause.
There's a lot more going on there than meets the eye.
It's making these predictions based on speech, and it's like there's doctoral degrees related to figuring this stuff out, right? And then even just being able to text, like to write text and to have a computer understand essentially like in natural language what you're saying. It's like, give me a pizza, right? It used to be like with computers, they're just so rigid. It's like if you didn't enter the precise command, you wouldn't get the function that you wanted. So much of the research has actually kind of gone into making these things like, that my 5-year-old could do it, right? It's, deliver me a pizza. I don't know why that's such a good example.
So what are your hopes for this, the cutting edge, the tip of the sword, automation and machine learning in the software, sort of in the construction industry? Like, is there anything that's really interesting that you're seeing down the line that could happen that will affect the daily tasks of people working in the commercial residential construction industry in Atlantic Canada?
So there's a bit of a sentimental answer to this, right? But when I daydream about kind of like a future related to this, I don't necessarily daydream about like, racks and racks of servers that are, like doing this amazing task that, whatever changes the world. I mean, it's a part of the vision. But what I actually think about is, it's like construction is so hard and it's so time consuming and it's so difficult and there's so much that can go wrong. And what I really hope for with people is that they get a piece or 2 or 10 of their life back. It's like, I hope that they get to take more vacations. I hope that they're less stressed about their job. I hope that it saves them kind of like a burden that, they weren't going to have before. And maybe for people who are really ambitious, like maybe it allows them to bid a job or like achieve something that they wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. But just like I really hope that our research kind of makes us a little bit more human. I find that so much of how the technology is designed, it sort of like seems to separate us from our lives.
Well, I think earlier, just to piggyback that, we had used an analogy earlier.
It was your analogy. You can take credit for it.
What was it again? We talked about how
social media
or a lot of technology uses the way we're wired psychologically, etc., and it uses it against us and eats up our time. To present scenarios where we're going to become addicted and altering our behavior.
The perfect cat video is
altering our behavior. Yes, and so what you're trying to do is you're in the same space, specific to construction, trying to leave the human condition and the way we're wired, leave the things that are good for humans to be doing and take away things that computers can do much faster.
That'd be a really good description of it.
That we don't need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And
whether it's counting the number of doors and frames in a whole building or calculating, the elevations of a survey on a site plan, or any number of similar scenarios that might involve tedious, monotonous counting and entering in data, etc.
To put a button on that thought, Dan, with social media, so it's kind of circling back to the description of machine learning, right? If you give a computer a bunch of examples of something, it can make a prediction, right? How it works with social media is, if you use Facebook, for example, if you're a typical user, you're giving it thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, and perhaps millions of interactions with different things, right? So it'll go, this person really likes this type of cat. And its recommendations are based on feeding a machine learning algorithm all these examples of like what you're interested in. And it gets better and better and better and better at serving up exactly what you want. And so it is very much using machine learning and AI to kind of like essentially distract you more. And the reason that they want to do this is the more engaging those platforms are, obviously the more you stay on, the more advertising revenue gets generated, and that's ultimately what would serve the interests of the shareholders of these companies. Well, many of which are obviously publicly traded.
Whereas what you're doing with construction AI is you're using that data that the machine learning and automation to take away tasks that we don't need to do. We don't need, that's monotonous and tedious.
That's right. And so it's like, so maybe hopefully more people will go fishing or, and it's like, or you can divert that time to something else that's productive at work, like negotiating a better deal with a supplier or thinking about a way to plan a job that is going to make it more efficient or to run smoother, to do a better work back schedule. Think
of the cost savings for business owners who have, quantity surveyors, like a number of them, where this automation is saving man hours.
So in my experience, estimators are among the most skilled people in a construction company, right? And so you're getting one of your top guns to basically look at a bunch of X's and go bloop, bloop, bloop. Like it's like that person is enormously valuable and has just
he should be reading specs
or she
and looking through or she
absolutely. Like this is a person that very likely has an advanced engineering degree. It's like they can do they can really help your business in so many ways. It's like, don't let them spend their time counting stuff. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get too much
and that's your business.
On my soapbox here. But that's
in a nutshell.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Amen. We should talk a little bit about the other thing you have going on, Blueforce.
Yeah, sure. So there's an interesting story here. So this is maybe 3 years ago. I was talking to one of the investors of my company out in BC, and he goes, "Man, I can't get people fast. Like, I mean, white hot construction industry out there, right?
Yeah.
It's like I can't find people like."
And they're building modular homes or something.
That's right. Yeah. So he's like, I'll take any warm body. Do you know anyone?
Give me the bodies.
Anybody. Yeah. And as it happened, my neighbor in Musquodoboit Harbor, this is somebody. His name is Wesley King, and we kind of hit it off. And I was like, what do you do? And he's actually got 2 jobs. I'll tell the other job in a second. It's kind of cool. But one of them is sending maritimers out in other places in Canada for it's primarily maritimers to other places in Canada to perform skilled trades work. So this has great application for building the guts for e-commerce systems like conveyor belts and sorters and that kind of stuff.
Right.
So that'd be a big vertical for Blueforce Logistics. And then another one would be agricultural manufacturing. So
these are like welders, mechanics,
millwrights.
Millwrights. Yeah.
And then laborers too. So not necessarily a CWB welder, but somebody that knows how to use one.
Right.
Like having basic safety training and being able to read a set of plans would be like kind of key prerequisites for like conveyor assembly. Some of the tasks can get pretty complicated. Right. And then obviously with ag manufacturing, that gets a little further down in terms of further up, maybe you want to call it, in terms of the skill level.
Mm-hmm. So this is the name of the company is Blueforce Logistics Limited.
Yeah.
And so you guys are recruiting on behalf of the company.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and the owners of the company are really wonderful people. They've been really good to me, and they obviously, it's like I think they're performing a really valuable service, right? Because
where are most of them going? Like to a certain province, or was it initially Alberta and now it's all over from Ontario?
Yeah.
So
the company has its roots in the oil sector, but it's diversified into agriculture manufacturing in Saskatchewan. That's a big one. But e-commerce fulfillment is everywhere. I mean, it's like Amazon,
and
DHL.
When you say that, you mean they're actually constructing these conveyor belts and those sort of things.
Sorters, conveyor belts. Yeah. Caster decks is another thing, like for airports.
Okay.
But it's like all these things that, are the backbone of how basically we order our dog food.
Back to the dog food.
Back to the dog food.
Back to
our dog food magic device. how we the amount of work that would go into saying, Alexa, I need dog food, and then it shows up. It's like there was somebody that had to make the
Pizzas and
conveyor
dog
belt.
food, brother.
Pizzas and dog food. There was a lot of work that went into that entire process, like the natural speech recognition that like told the system to, and you picked and packed it, and it went on a conveyor belt, which went on a truck. But it's a remarkable amount of innovation and work that would have happened over time to make that possible.
Yeah, so true. So just for some context, like how many East Coast tradespeople in the run of a year have you
Hundreds.
Hundreds from
Hundreds.
Blueforce placing them wherever for whatever company, whether it be building modular homes to welding agricultural equipment to hundreds a year.
E-commerce, absolutely.
And so how do you find these tradespeople, or do they find you?
But both, So Indeed is a big source of applicants. Facebook is another one. This interesting thing. Facebook is enormously popular in the Maritimes. It's popular everywhere, but it has a particularly high penetration out in Nova Scotia, PEI, Newfoundland, and New Brunswick. So that's a huge source of
Facebook
inbound.
ads.
Facebook ads, and then organic search would be another one, and word of mouth, which is another thing.
Always going to be a great marketing tool in the East Coast.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's say, for example, I was a carpenter and you got Blueforce. I was engaged with them. I found a job in.
So we would
BC.
find you the job.
You find the job.
Yeah.
And then you take care of their flights. You take care of everything it takes to get them out there.
Get that person
working on
site.
the job site.
Yeah. So the basically the value proposition. I'll go through quickly the value proposition for the worker and for our clients, right? So for the worker, it's basically like, hey, I'm a CWB welder, and I have WMIS and this type of safety training. We go, okay, cool. We'll see what we can find for you. We'll find. So lo and behold, there's an agricultural manufacturer in Saskatchewan that needs 10 people or whatever. And this welder fits the bill. What we'll do for the welder is we will set them up with a flight, a car, accommodations, everything that they need to get on site, right? So they are not out of pocket a dime, right? Wow. So it's like they basically hop on a plane, go out, do the work for it's often like say an 8-week rotation. Yeah. Sometimes these projects can last for multiple years, but it'd be like 8 weeks, then you go back home for a bit, kind of unwind, and then go back to work, and that cycle continues. And then for the client companies, it would be like, hey, we've been trying for 3 months to get this type of person, I don't know, say a CNC machinist for our night shift. And they're just going it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So that would be when they would call Blueforce and say we can't find this person. Or another one would be, hey, we bid 3 jobs. We thought we would get 1, but we got all 3. So now we need to ramp up our crews enormously for a relatively short period of time, and then go back down. You're not comfortable necessarily with taking on all of that overhead. So
can Blueforce place a Maritimer with a East Coast company?
That's
they
happened.
wanted?
Yeah, that happens.
So it's not like you're always sending people to other Western provinces. You're placing people here too.
So no, absolutely. Yeah, no. It absolutely happens. I guess I'm just speaking more in terms of a general rule. How it generally happens is that you have a lot of people from the Maritimes that go, out for work. We do take people from Alberta and BC and that sort of thing and move them as well. It's just that. For whatever reason, there's an abundance of skilled trades out in the Maritimes, and I think it's a bit of an underappreciated thing. We've got lots of, really good people here, and
it's not like a lot of them have to go somewhere else to find work right now, being as busy as it is in construction. But yet, maybe there are certain trades that's necessary.
It really completely depends, right? I mean, obviously, construction is really booming right now. So maybe some people that would have been looking for work elsewhere, it's less so. But yeah. Yeah,
so I wanted to ask about Blueforce and who are your competitors? Or any other recruitment firms
tons.
But specific to construction?
Well, it would be there's very few companies that do exactly what Blueforce does.
But then there's many companies that
Manpower, Matrix. So the key difference between Blueforce and these other companies is that with the the other companies, they're generally restricted to whatever the local labor market has. So it's like if you can't find a CNC machinist,
Yeah.
like.
But you're using that example because it's a rarity.
It is.
And it's a night shift, so you've got to find the right person out of 1,000 that's going to be right for that job.
Yeah, and it's like if you can't find them locally, why would a temp agency be able to find them locally? Would be my question, right?
Yeah.
With Blueforce, the value proposition there is that like we will draw from a much larger talent pool. We'll scour every square inch of Canada to find you the right person, and bring them on site at a reasonable cost.
And you're placing hundreds of Maritimers in trades positions.
Yeah, not just
year.
Maritimers, but
mostly
a huge chunk of them are Maritimers.
Right.
Yeah, and we're placing them all over the place.
And that's from the trend of the modular homes in and around Alberta, where the workforce was needed. So that was a trend at that time, and then now there could be different trends. And
yeah, and it's obviously it's a never shifting thing. It's like you kind of adapt to what is going on in the world, but it's a never changing thing for sure.
Very cool, man. So if for some of our listeners and our audience today, if they want to find construction AI and they want to know more about the software and machine learning and automation and all the services that you guys provide, and also Blueforce, where can they find you online on social media?
Well, so blueforcelogistics.com is for Blueforce. Construction.ai is obviously construction AI. And but honestly, like I would love it if people connected with me on LinkedIn. Like my name is Jeff Graham. If you type in Jeff Graham Blueforce, Jeff Graham Construction AI, you're gonna find me. And I'd love to have listeners connect with me that way and be happy to like ask, got some questions or want to chat or whatever. I'm always looking to make new connections. So that I would say that would be my preferred way of people reaching out to me.
Awesome.
Unless you think I'm a big jerk talking about dog food this way and pizza.
Hey, never. Those two topics are right down my alley. So, especially with the extremely interesting topics that we've had today, it's been a pleasure though. Seriously, some really interesting stuff, and not every day to have a chance to talk about that side of the industry.
Yeah, cool.
With Blueforce too, with the recruitment and those situations, but especially with construction AI and it's neat to kind of get a glance at how that stuff sort of happens behind the scenes when you're someone who's involved in construction on the other end. And it's so valuable to us and saves us so much time. And it's great to contrast that with someone like yourself who's in it and immersed in it and in that side of the business. So it's been amazing.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Dan. Thanks for having me on, and it was a lot of fun.
Cool. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Atlanta Construction Podcast. Be sure to follow us on any podcast platform you use. You can also find us on LinkedIn and Instagram at Atlanta Construction Podcast. Be sure to send us a comment or a review. We'd love to engage with you.